Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. My name is Barnaby Rudge Hoskins, and I'm here with my colleague John Jasper Murison Bowie and our very special guest, Nicholas Nickleby Hornby. Welcome, Nick.
I don't get it.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thanks, Nick. In this episode, we'll be talking about Nick's new book, Dickens and Prince, A Particular Kind of Genius. And we'll also be listening to clips from a Boz Scaggs audio interview and just possibly touching on the World Cup with the man who wrote the immortal Fever Pitch. First off, Nick, you've written a lot about music over your hugely successful career as a novelist and screenwriter. Is there a parallel universe in which you worked as a stringer for NME, became the editor of Mojo, and are now the pop critic at The Guardian?
Not only is there a parallel universe, I believe that's the life that I am living, and I'm only visiting this one. I presumed that that's what would happen to me, and it didn't. Yeah, it was NME in the 70s was an absolutely huge thing for me. And funnily enough, I've been watching this documentary about Pauline Kael, who I used to read as a teenager. I was a really bad student, right? Got terrible A-levels, terrible university degree, scraped in. And I thought, looking back on it, why was I aged 18 and knowing nothing about anyone, reading Pauline Kael? And it was because of that voice, critical voice, that seemed to be what I was doing in my life, which was writing essays about books. But these people, Julian Tony and Pauline Kael and Grill Marcus and all of these people, were doing it in ways that just sort of blew my mind. And they were very helpful in helping me find any kind of writing voice, but also, fiction voice as well as non-fiction.
Yeah. Is it somewhere in the recesses of my memory, I think you were one of the people who responded to the Hip Young Gunslingers advert. I'm sure that's an urban myth.
I don't think I did. I think I would have been too intimidated by the wording to respond to the advert.
What's a Hip Young Gunslinger?
Yeah. There is a reference to it in High Fidelity.
Yes.
That when Barry is looking for band members, he puts on the little card, Hip Young Gunslingers Wanted.
Nice. Nice.
I believe that Sebastian Faulks, or Faulks, however you pronounce his name, was one of the people who wrote in and applied.
Who deemed himself to be
yes,
a hit young gunslinger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, that's how I think of him now.
Yes, yeah. It'd be interesting to trawl through who did apply. I bet there's a few people in there that we'd recognise now.
If you had, followed that parallel universe sort of career path, do you think you would have written about music in the way that you have written about music? I mean, I know it's so ludicrously hypothetical. Do you think, because of the success you experienced, albeit, as you said, you would say a late age, 35, I think, Fever Pitch was sort of like, in my memory, a kind of overnight sensation. And you were a name writer very quick. But do you think you, as a result of Fever Pitch, and then obviously High Fidelity, do you think you've written about music in a different way than you would have if you'd, say, written for the NME and Mojo or whatever? You have written for Mojo, of
Yeah,
course.
I've written for Mojo, and I did write for the New Yorker for a while.
Yes, you had
so I've done a bit of music journalism. But I look back and think everything happened for a reason, and the longer I spent not doing the New Yorker or Guardian book reviews or the NME, the more chance I had of finding a voice that I ended up with, which has served me well. So even though, of course, it was an ambition, I think I'm kind of lucky that I didn't end up that way. And there was a period also in the 80s where I don't think I could have coped with the music. I was really scratching around. I was really disappointed after punk. That was music that completely spoke to me. And then the kind of raincoaty era of Solemn Young Men, not so good. So I was listening to a lot of soul and R&B, and I was much more likely to go and see Luther Vandross and the Smiths, also world music.
Got on one bill.
yeah. And a bit of Salif Keita and things that were coming through then. So I think I would have lost a home as well.
Well, you talk about soul and R&B, and you say in your new book, Dickens and Prince, that you first became aware of Prince exactly the same time as I did, which was hearing I Want to Be Your Lover on the radio, some radio station.
Yeah.
I don't even know which one.
The
it
Immortal
was for
Groove still stands up. I mean, it's one of the greatest dance.
That opening, well, we were talking about the opening of Lowdown, which we might talk about later, but that is up there, I think. That's
so electric. It just every hair on the back of your neck stands up and you're like, I want to get up.
And it's a sort of sound of ecstasy as well. I'm talking about the emotion.
Yeah.
And it's so joyful, like those opening few bars. That's one.
Yes. I can remember hearing it and hearing the way it was almost like this conversation between the vocal line and the guitar lick, that kind of, they just dovetail so beautifully.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is so brilliant, but is he just going to be like a one-hit wonder? You saw the cover of the second album and he looked like someone who's just being groomed for a fairly orthodox career path through like R&B and soul.
Rick James style.
Yeah, and I didn't even know where he was from at that point. I didn't know anything about Minneapolis or all of that. And then the next thing we knew, in a sense, if I can sort of use the word we, was this total transformation of Prince into this kind of monochrome figure of Dirty Mind.
Yeah.
And being embraced by the rock press. You know, I mean, we're sitting here and we've got this copy of New York Rocker sitting in front of you on the table here. And this is June 1981, if I've got that right. And it's Prince, I mean, just radically different Prince from the guy who made I Want to Be Your Lover.
In a magazine with Blondie and the Bunnymen on the cover.
Exactly. And I can remember that. I can remember Chris Salavich's interview with Prince in the NME, also from 1981. And I was lucky enough to see Prince at the Ritz in New York early in 1981. And I was just on board straight away with this guy. I thought he was just magnificent and I loved the radical nature of Dirty Mind. I mean, no one else in R&B would have done such a thing. Interestingly, Mark Pringle, who can't be with us today, added an interview from Blues and Soul magazine that Prince gave John Abbey in February of that year, of 81. And he says so many interesting things about his career and his background. He says, I hate being put into any specific category, so I never plan to get caught up in that punk thing. But then I'm not an R&B artist either, because I'm a middle-class kid from Minnesota, which is very much white America. But he also, when Musician magazine...
I can't believe you said that, actually.
No, I know. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But what I love about Prince is that when he was just a little while later, the American journalists were sort of saying, oh, are you now a new wave artist? Do you have more in common with Blondie than with, I don't know, Rick James? He goes, the soul snob in him goes, when being compared with Devo or The Clash, Prince sneers, maybe, but those guys can't sing. And I love that, because it's like, I'm going to have my cake and I'm going to eat it. You know, I'm not an orthodox soul artist, but I really can sing. I've got the soul chops.
See, the funny thing with me is what I was just talking about in terms of how I would have been a bit adrift in the 80s because of my tastes. I looked at Dirty Mind and thought, oh, he isn't who I thought he was.
Yeah, and that's putting it mildly, right?
Yeah, and you know, for me, I was looking for Anita Baker, I was looking for Luther. I thought I'd found something with Prince, and then, yeah, like you say, Devo,
he let you down.
He let me down.
He put on the mat.
How could he? How could he?
So that was a time when I wasn't so interested.
Did you ever go back to Dirty Mind?
Oh, yeah, of course. I've gone back to everything.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, of course you went back to it. Yeah. But you like it now?
Yes. But not as much.
Not
as
as much. Yeah. So that same year, Prince came to London for the first time, and I saw that show as well. And Mark and Martin co-founders of RBP, also, though I didn't know them there, were at the Lyceum to see this half-empty show. I mean, it genuinely was half-empty. I had seen this Ritz show, which was teeming with people, and here he is in the Lyceum, and it's half full. And I remember feeling sorry for him.
Yeah, as a parenthesis, I've noticed that as you get older and you tell young people who you've seen, they can't believe it.
Yeah.
But then I also say, you just bought tickets. There was no one there.
Yes.
At my Bob Marley show, the back of the Hammersmith Odeon wasn't full.
No.
And, tons of occasions like that where it now seems as though you had a golden ticket that got you into anything.
Yes.
And it really wasn't like that. And of course, Prince at Lyceum, half empty.
Yes.
If only.
I know. If you could sort of go back there, you'd get in there.
You'd get in. It's pretty good to know.
A time capsule back. I mean, so we're running a review on the homepage of that show by the excellent Betty Page of Not Born Betty Page, named after that fantastic 50s pin-up girl. Sounds 13th June 1981, and she says it's a rave review actually. In contrast to the review that Ian Penman wrote in The NME, which was quite sniffy about Prince, I think. But she says he goes right over the top with his physical and lyrical sex obsession, but he does it with such style and natural cool that there's no question of heavy metal style caricature or kitschness. But just when you thought you had him sussed, he launches into a full-blown hard rock guitar solo which throws the soul pundits and fucks up the funketeers. And that was the thing. It was that weird feeling in the Lyceum. It was like people
who else was there?
Who else was there? You mean in terms of
what did it look like?
On stage?
No, in the crowd.
In the crowd. Well, I think it was, in my memory, it was people who'd read the NME interview and maybe bought Dirty Mind. And then the Blues and Soul crowd, the White Sox, guys in white socks from Romford or what, not being too sort of socially stereotyping, but it was a bit schizoid.
Yeah, and was it diverse in any way?
It was diverse to that extent that it wasn't a soul crowd and it wasn't a kind of post-punk crowd.
Do you think there were any black members of the audience?
I think there were, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I couldn't swear to it, but I think there were some black guys there, and they would have been the Blues and Soul sort of fraternity.
Yeah.
So, there were people kind of trying to make up their minds as to what Prince was really about,
Well, it's funny that you have to adjust.
Yeah.
Because he's presenting you with music that you haven't heard before. And so all the things that I were feeling, which was, I thought he was going to be a funk guy and he's let me down. And then the rock people thinking, well, I'm not sure about this because it's a bit, it's a bit disco. and it takes a while to realise that it's gloriously everything. And it might go from song to song being gloriously everything.
Yeah. Because on Dirty Mind, there is Got a Broken Heart Again, isn't there? Which is just a sort of typically gorgeous Prince ballad.
Soul ballad, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's what I love about it. When, you write so beautifully about Sign of the Times in this book, and that is just as eclectic and diverse as, it finishes with that absolutely sublime soul ballad, Adore, which I would sort of say is one of the best sort of top 10 soul ballads of all time.
It's funny with Prince because there's so much that's good on that record that the song stuck at the end. You think, is it as good as I think it is? And how many artists at the time, if that had been track 1, side 1 and 9 filler, they'd be famous for Adore.
Yeah. I do think Adore is...
No, fantastic.
It's certainly one of my favourite Prince tracks. Let's talk about your book. And so you had loved Prince from 79 onwards. So when did you start to think about writing about Prince, and then when did that get tangled up in Charles Dickens? Because as you say at the end of the book, you say this is really a book about work. You say, and by the time you finished, you feel very much it is a book about extraordinary hyperactive workaholism in a way, don't you? So,
Yeah.
so tell us about how Dickens and Prince came together in your imagination.
Well, it was really when the Sign of the Times box set came out, and I was reading. I mean, it took me by surprise. I didn't know that it was coming, really, and I didn't know quite what had been going on for him in 1985-6. And there were these long reviews that talked about what Prince was working on at the time. And he had, I think, 3 albums on the go, including an album for, what's his alter ego? Camille.
Camille, yes.
Yeah, so where he's going to do the whole album in that voice. And something like Sign of the Times and something like something else, I can't remember. And he never stopped making music, and I believe the record company told him that they couldn't do anything with these thousands of tracks. But what interested me was the idea of working on 2 things at once that were separate. And it just came into my mind, oh, that's what Dickens did. He wrote 2 novels at the same time, which I've always found one of the most extraordinarily baffling things about Dickens' brain, that these books that are, 800 or 900 pages long contain a cast of hundreds, that he could keep them separate in his head and write an instalment from one stage of one novel, an instalment from a much later stage of another novel, and we don't know
without getting any characters mixed up.
Not that we know of.
It would be funny, wouldn't it, to find that one character had migrated across.
Cameo appearance.
And this was all done
at
breakneck speed, because all Dickens was doing was trying to write the next instalment of his serialisation. He didn't really redraft. I mean, you can see drafts written on the page, but he never went back to them. He didn't go back to them when they were published in book form. It was just bang, move, bang, move. And, of course, that's exactly what Prince did. And there's this lovely story, I think, that Susan Rogers tells about the recording of Sign of the Times, and she'd built a studio for him, and she was really, really nervous about it. And he came in, and they used it for the first time, and it was for the Ballad of Dorothy Parker. And I don't know if you know the song, that it sounds like it's recorded underwater.
Very muffled kind of sound, yeah.
And Susan Rogers is having a heart attack because this is the first song that's been recorded in this studio, and it clearly isn't right. And what we hear is exactly what Prince recorded, wasn't interested in going back to it. And, there is a sense with great artists that their mistakes come to seem like their signatures.
Yeah.
And he could incorporate any kind of messing about like that and release it, and we're sitting there going, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. He just kind of responds to the muffled texture and makes it part of the vibe of the whole thing. And
because the most important thing for him is to work on the next song the next day, not this song for another day.
Dorothy was a waitress on the promenade. She worked a night shift. Dishwater blonde, tall and fine.
I mean, in some ways, he has more in common with, like, Dylan and Neil Young than with rock's great perfectionists. So let's say, like Steely Dan, for example. The meticulousness of their
Not sure they'd get on in the
recording.
studio, actually. I don't think
it wouldn't last very long. But, I mean,
their records sound ramshackle. The Dylan...
And Neil Young often don't they?
Dylan and Neil Young, completely. And
whereas Prince's don't.
No, they sound like these enormous built things.
Even Piano and a Microphone, the posthumous record that came out that's just him and his foot and a piano. Those are kind of demo-like versions of other tracks, but it feels like it could just be... They're perfect in many respects. For me, they're so moving and so vital in that it could be that he just wanted, designed them to be piano-only records, and they're just magical.
It's interesting where these people came from, isn't it? I guess, Prince spent a lot of his time, as I didn't know and found out for this book, he spent a lot of time in his mid to late teens in a recording studio with this English guy who was knocking around in Minneapolis. And he knew how to work a studio. And I think that Dylan and Neil Young probably weren't that interested, and they'd I mean, when you've had a success with the Basement Tapes, I guess, you know, you're not necessarily thinking about how sonic perfection is important to a commercial career. And then Steely Dan came out of a sort of late 50s, early 60s jazz and then jazz fusion thing where those things sound completely impeccable. So you can see it might have been important to them. So I think they've all come through different traditions of recording in different ages. And I think anyone who's making music in the 80s was probably more aware of a studio than people who'd been making it in the 60s.
Yeah, I think
apart
that's
from Brian
correct.
Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, the 80s is where kind of that fetishistic relationship with recording equipment.
That's why you can't even listen to a lot of it.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned the piano and the microphone, Jasper, because at some point in Dickens and Prince, a particular kind of genius, you speak for a lot of us, I think, where you say, in the end, we just stopped listening because there was so much stuff. And to me, who'd been so obsessed by Prince, a lot of it felt just like throwaway. It would just come in, just, you know, press record. And it's just like funk grooves by numbers. I could go back and listen to, as you say, the 25 albums that came out after Sign of the Times, but I think I would still be disappointed by the vast majority of it. When Piano and Microphone came out, and I know that was pre all of that, I fell back in love with Prince. Just that hearing 17 Days for the first time, it moved me to tears.
Been gone 17 days, 17 long nights. Major is knowing that you're holding someone else tight.
There's so much emotion in it.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of us felt after Sign of the Times was like, where's the emotion in this music? It's gone. And there was so much. I mean, we talk about Adore. I mean, these are heartbreaking things. The guy had so much, there's so much feeling there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to hear that track and then Mary Don't You Weep, suddenly he's like this gospel singer. It's really one of the best things that I think he ever did, and I love the credit for the foot.
Yeah, just stomping away. No,
well, the thing that has sort of frustrated me while thinking about this book and listening, what I did was I went on Prince chat rooms, and found threads about Prince's greatest songs of the 21st century, and I hadn't heard of many of them, and I made a playlist of them, and I would say that on nearly every album there is
at least one
song that you would want to play a lot.
Yeah.
Even things where I didn't go anywhere near them, because what's the Something Children, the Jehovah's Witness record?
The Rainbow Children?
I don't know. Is it the Rainbow Children? Might be. But there's some funk on there that is
very good,
really good. Sort of strips the skin off, and he's singing about God. And there's one called "The Work," which I recommend. And you think, well, it doesn't really matter. It's like listening to Mahalia Jackson or whatever. If you can just ignore what you don't agree with in the lyrics. So there are things scattered around. On my Spotify page, there is a long playlist called 21st Century Prince.
Nice, we'll have to check that out. Because you mentioned a couple of them in the book. You mentioned Sticky Like Glue, Pretty Man and Chelsea Rogers, all three of which I listened to this morning on my way into work. And particularly Sticky Like Glue. It's just like, oh God. I mean, as you say in that passage, you say, like, if any other artist had released those, you'd be like, well,
if it came up on the radio in 2000 and whenever it was, you would have been straight
sit up and take notice. Yeah, absolutely. And they're irresistibly Prince and great.
Yeah.
But there is all that other. I mean, I remember trying to listen to, because I like Chaka Khan a lot, and the album that he did with Chaka Khan, and you think it is kind of interminable. There's just like no kind of moving purpose to it in some respect, other than that it's his urge to create, which you go into a lot. But yeah, it's odd, really. But then again, he did collaborate with people and do great things. I mean, Janelle Monáe. Just before he died, he was working with Janelle Monáe, and that record is amazing, and she's amazing. So I don't know how you figure that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this book is probably more about the urge to create than the imperative to listen.
Right.
Nicely put. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another of the pieces that will be featuring on the homepage is this piece from The Face that Chris Heath. The great
I
Chris
love that
Heath,
piece.
Yeah. December 91, he spends 6 strange days at Paisley Park, which, listeners who don't know, was the huge studio complex built in Minnesota, Prince built in Minnesota.
That cost like $2.5 million a month to run.
Yeah. And at the very end of it, tying in with what you're just talking about, the sort of compulsive urge to just create and produce, there's this quote, and so this is what Chris says. There's one bit of our conversation that keeps playing over in my head, written down now. It looks a bit silly and precious, and all those things that people who don't like Prince don't like about him, but at the same time, it was moving. He was telling me in a different, more intense way than the first time why he makes music. And this is what Prince said to him. I make music because if I don't, I die. I record because it's in my blood. I hear sounds all the time. It's almost a curse to know that you can always make something new. It's almost a curse.
Absolutely.
And I read that, having read your book, and there are moments in your book
I wish I'd seen that, obviously, when I was writing the book, but it's what I'm saying, that there is a kind of curse to it, and the impulse is only to create and not necessarily to think about how to shape or put it out in the world.
no-off switch thing.
Yeah.
And you tie that in with Dickens very well, I think. I mean, when you to go back to what you said, because I'm a massive Dickens fan as well, one of my favourite musicians of all time, Charlie Dickens, and but when you talked about him starting Nicholas Nickleby before he'd even finished Oliver Twist, I mean, my brain started to overheat, and then towards the end, when you describe the incredible pressure that Dickens was under in the last years of his life, I felt I was coming out in hives, and I just wanted to say, stop. Slow down, this is insane, you're going to kill yourself. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, it did kill it, and it probably, it certainly didn't help Prince.
No, I think Prince was killed by work. I think that opiate addiction came, I think he was a clean living person.
Yes.
But the knees and the hips, and I think he was
also dancing in heels.
And dancing in heels. I mean, he was in agonising pain, I think, and he had to use these things because of the problems that work had created for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Prince a number of times over the years, and when I heard about, even before he died, and one heard of that incident on the plane, and you heard about opioid addiction. I think we were hearing about that before he died.
Yes,
I think, and I'm just remembering him jumping off amplifiers on those six inch or 4 or 5 inch heels, and just thinking, that wasn't smart.
Yeah, I'm not playing five-a-side anymore. How was he doing that?
I know, absolutely, because he's a regular player in a Minneapolis five-a-side game, isn't he?
But, I mean, we are more or less the same age, you and me and Prince. And he was doing things that most people were not doing way on into his life, but you do wonder how. Yeah.
I wanted to just look at the sort of, whatever the noun is from prolific, if there is a noun from it, prolificity. I'm sure that isn't a noun.
I think there might be a prolificity.
Well, I just wanted to talk about it because, in a sense, we already touched on this idea that just, producing huge amounts of work doesn't necessarily, equal quality. And
although more quality than you would have thought. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, certainly with Dickens, one of the things that struck me, it's an obvious thing, but I don't think we talk about it. There is no forgotten Dickens book. There's nothing out of print.
No, although
you say
Barnaby Rudge's is least loved, which I took slightly personally.
Well, you shouldn't have introduced yourself that way on the show. But everything in print and read still for things that he was knocking off as fast as he possibly could. So, there is a basic quality that he never gets under.
Well, here's a sort of slight... Look, I love Dickens, and for me, reading Dickens is like going into this world that you describe very well, this eerie, nocturnal world of London slums, but it's very different, isn't it, from the great psychological novelists. I don't know whether you read George Saunders's A Swim in the Pond in the Rain.
I've bought it, and I haven't read it.
It's just the best book I've read about literature. And what it made me think reading your book was Dickens is sort of the opposite of that, because what Saunders says is you write a short story and you just write it and rewrite it for years sometimes, right? And you end up with something that's perfect, and it's absolute opposite of what Dickens does. And I suppose the only thing I would say about Dickens is that a lot of the characters are, we might say, a little one-dimensional. But that's not the point, because Dickens isn't writing books about psychological. He's not about psychological.
No, that's the wrong
depth.
competition.
Yes.
You've entered it's a category error. Really.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's mosaic.
Yes.
Each stone is very simple.
Yes.
But then he lays this pattern, and when you look back on what you've finished in this 800, 900 page novel, what is made out of these one-dimensional characters is quite incredible. So, of course, he's going to lose if you compare him to the great psychological realists, but he's doing something else completely.
Well, it's almost like London becomes this sort of single teeming kind of brain, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With all the stuff going on in it, and it's not about, as you say, it's not Tolstoy or Flaubert, but it's
the
remarkable.
characters are kind of one-dimensional, but you also feel like they have lives beyond the pages of the book.
Well, I mean,
and
for
that
one-dimensional
to me kind of
characters, given that we still talk about
right,
them,
Yes.
and
have entered the language.
That kind of the fact that you don't get every last psychological detail, but there's enough to make you imagine that they probably have psychological details that you're just not aware of yet. They have a kind of an extension slightly out of the pages.
Well, when I first read about Mrs. Jellyby and Mrs. Pardiggle in Bleak House, and it was my introduction to Dickens, really, I could not believe that this psychological type existed in the 19th century, that it was a permanent type, that we all know people who are spending so long doing whatever it is they're doing for charity that their kids, are not getting picked up from football or whatever.
Yes.
And this happened, and Dickens noticed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need great psychological complexity to look at that and think, oh, that's really interesting.
Yes. Yes.
And they're a thin bit of the book, but they're valuable. Mr. Micawber, something will always turn up. Again, it's a type we know and we find completely exasperating, especially, for example, if you're related to them, and Dickens was related to quite a few of them. So it's a difference between a Jamesian, enormously complicated portrait of one person.
Yes.
It's a portrait of several thousand people.
Yes. Yeah. I also think there's an interesting element, which is that there can be a bit of a danger in over-analysing the circumstances in which a work was created. Like, because you know that it was written in instalments and because it was done rapidly and all of that, versus knowing that some other book was rewritten and rehashed and kind of done very, very thoroughly, does that colour how you feel about it? I think we can fall as sort of cultural commentators into a trap of kind of assuming that because someone has written and rewritten, that must mean it's better.
I think that's our underlying assumption, but we have millions of exceptions to the rule. So, we make a place for On the Road, which was written on one piece of paper in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we regard that as an important work of art.
Yes.
And then we dismiss something that was knocked off in a day, and then we go back to the Beatles' first album, which was 12 hours of recording or whatever. So there is absolutely no consistency to how we view the way art is
And in
created.
terms of music, there's the element, you think about jazz and how a lot of jazz is improvised, and that was fuel for critics to say, well, it's not as important or as real or as, true music in the way that classical compositions are, because no one has spent hours kind of thinking about every note and where it's placed and all of this kind of thing. And there is an element of, whether it's snobbery or elitism, whatever it is, in kind of feeling like, well, something that came out spontaneously can never be as brilliant as something that was laboured over.
It's interesting. I involved a little bit with a jazz charity called Tomorrow's Warriors. I don't know if you've come across them.
I have.
Anyone significant in British jazz,
Yes.
especially this amazing new
London
breed, has
jazz
come
scene
through.
is wonderful. They've all
Yeah.
come through. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. I didn't know you were involved in that, but it's a really, really cool organisation.
Really cool. But Janine Irons, who runs it, was telling me that recently, the last 2 or 3 years, they've had a lot of young, classically trained people come to them who can't improvise. They don't know how to improvise. And actually, improvisation is pretty much the whole name of the game for most areas of being a working musician. And I just thought it's really interesting that improvisation is a very highly valuable skill
Yeah.
that actually you do need help with as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
You need to be taught
Well, I kind of
improvisation.
view improvisation and composition as actually just being points on the same
Absolutely.
line. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'll stop because it's what I wrote my dissertation about. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
The philosophy of jazz, giving
I
an
read it?
ontology. Yeah, if you like.
I would really
Sure,
like to.
okay, cool. But yeah, no, I find it really interesting, and I think there are lots of elements that go into why people make those claims. But yeah, improvisation is fundamental to art in general, I think. And even when you're composing, there's a sense in which composition is codified improvisation on some level. You have to start with a blank page somewhere, and how do you fill that? You improvise.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's slightly weird when you realise that, what your attitude to something like jazz is, because, Miles Davis played improvised music night after night after night after night, and we get stuck on one recording.
Yeah, I mean,
which would have been
I can probably
completely
hum
different.
most of kind of the solo and kind of blue.
Exactly, which in a way sort of defeats the point of what he was doing.
Yeah.
You mentioned Henry James, Nick, and I
don't want to go too far with
don't
this.
worry. I just want, but we were just sort of talking in a slightly facetious way about Dickens as a kind of proto rock star, and I couldn't resist mentioning this fabulous story. I thought you might almost have made it up, that Henry James went to get tickets for one of Dickens's readings, and he did 76 dates in 5 months in America. I mean, eat your heart out, right?
Yeah.
And James turned up and couldn't get tickets at 7 a.m. because there was a queue round the block. I thought, Nick is just me. This can't be true.
What a rock star.
It's true, yeah.
What a rock star.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you say, like Prince, their Achilles heel was women.
In a really odd way.
In really different and odd ways, but it
they're
was
both
sort of
odd.
their undoing in some ways, wasn't it?
I wanted to say that one of the things I realised I was doing when I was writing this book was comparing the life of two superstars.
Yes.
And in the 19th century, there really weren't very many. I mean, it was very hard to break America.
There was no MTV.
If you're in Europe, it was very hard to mean much to the people of Los Angeles
Dickens
or
did.
California.
Yeah.
Dickens did.
Yeah.
So that made him kind of a unique comparison point, that they did live in some ways the same kind of public lives. But yes, the women.
Well, do we want to say anything about that?
Well, Prince was very, very supportive of women in an extraordinary way. I mean, in terms of the musicians and
Is that a
people
euphemism?
recording. Yeah. And then he made these, frankly, terrible records. I mean,
With many of
them, to the extent that his manager said, you don't have to make a double album with someone to fuck them. That was his
you quote
advice to
old
Prince.
Steve Foster,
Sorry, is
stop
that
doing
what you were
A&R
saying?
with your dick.
Stop doing
It's like-
A&R
it's
with
only
your
more
dick.
on point.
Yeah. But he was one of the most beautiful, charismatic, sexy men in the world.
Yeah.
And yet there was some weird idea he had that unless he'd made an album with them, he hadn't gone the whole way.
As it were.
that was fourth base.
That is brilliant. I mean, it is strange, isn't it? And I often wonder whether you think of all the protégés that sort of came through.
By the way, you cannot find much of a trace of any of that music now.
Well, I mean, from The Time to Jill Jones to, Cat Glove. I mean, there's so many different... But none of them were... I mean, not that they didn't have talent, but they didn't have a sort of a talent that you could distinguish from Prince's influence.
No, there was a sort of Paisley Park stamp on the music, and that was about it. A sort of vague instrumentation that he
Even
used.
with the Mavis Staples record.
Yeah.
you know.
And I used to get so excited about those things, and I thought maybe he will understand how to create a new Staples Singers album or one of those Mavis solo albums from the 70s.
Yeah. But he wasn't.
It's really
He wasn't
Prince
interested, he
feat
just-
Mavis Staples. You know, it's not. Yes, yeah.
And
Not a Mavis Staples record. It's a Prince
not a
record
Mavis
that happens
Staples.
to have Mavis Staples
Yeah.
singing on it.
Tapping on your window like a falling rain. Crying like a baby in a cradle, saying, "Pick me up again."
Two of the very poignant facts that you mention in the book about Prince is that after that plane had to come down and his life, and he had to be literally resuscitated, and I don't remember where it was, but you say that the next day, I believe it is, he cycles to a record store to buy an album by Santana and an album by Stevie Wonder. And then you also say, which is even more sort of chilling, that 2 days before he died, he went to maybe the same record store to buy Hajira by Joni Mitchell. I mean, that just blew my mind. I mean, anyone who loves Prince knows that he worshipped those artists.
Yes.
And you talk about the Woodstock movie and how mind-blowing it was to a 10-year-old Prince to see
it was so
Santana,
extraordinary for him.
Santana, Sly and Jimi Hendrix. And that,
And went with his dad.
how would that
age.
not have
Yeah.
shaped something about
But he was also so desperate to see it, which really touched me, that he was so young and had pestered his dad to go and see this 3-hour rock show in a cinema.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got very far with my 10-year-old, I don't think.
And also the Joni claiming to remember a teenage Prince.
That is astonishing. That
Yes,
detail.
and
Can we really credit that?
well, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking how many Afro-American
Would have been there.
teenagers would have been there
With a big afro.
with a big
which he would
afro
have had.
and younger than everybody
Right,
else.
right. So it
So
had to
I
be
think
him.
it's kind of believable, yes, that if he was close enough and she could see him, she'd think, wow, that's weird. I didn't know I attracted this kind of audience.
It reminded me of doing I wrote this very big Todd Rundgren piece once, and I interviewed Bebe Buell, who was his girlfriend. And she told me that she remembered a young Prince, a pre-famous Prince, coming backstage when Todd played in Minneapolis.
Wow.
Now, again, do I really believe that? I'd love to believe it, because I do think Todd, who's a big hero of mine, was an influence on Prince.
Yeah, it's just piecing the details of that together, isn't it? Like a teenage Prince goes backstage.
He'd been too shy, probably
Well,
anyway.
also, you've tried to go backstage at a show. You have to be
I
pretty
waited all night.
determined.
I waited all night outside Morton's in Berkeley Square with Matt Snow, waiting for Todd Rundgren to come out of his after-show party, and I don't think he was even in there.
Tragic.
It was a heartbreaking
Yeah.
moment.
I find it harder to buy that a kid could have got himself backstage to see
Yeah,
Todd Rundgren. But I can believe he bought a ticket to see Joni.
yeah. So maybe the last thing that I'll just quote about Prince was from an interview I did with Susan Rogers, who of course has just published her own
Just published a book and is
about-
now what's her job? Music psychologist.
Yes.
I want to know what
I'd
that
love
is.
to read this book.
Yeah.
And I even had a mad notion a week ago. So maybe we could get Susan on the podcast with Nick. But it's just too much
I've
of a
been
stretch.
sent a proof of the book. Have you got it?
No,
Yeah,
I haven't.
yeah.
I haven't. I've read about it.
Yeah.
But she was, Mark and Martin worked with Susan Rogers when Hot House were doing some recording in LA. So they fell in love with Susan
Yeah.
Rogers.
How could
I
you
remember
not?
speaking to her on the phone about Prince, and she was wonderful. And I asked her, and this is so kind of apropos everything you wrote about that, did you ever see Prince as a workaholic? And this is what she said. I did see it as workaholism. We worked so many Christmas Eves and New Year's Days. It was compulsion, it was ambition, but it also filled a vacancy in his life. There wasn't much else going on.
That's very much what it feels like, that it was the one life that he had, and in absence of family and parents, and one can only imagine that for him, music was a person,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, he lived so many lives through it in many respects that he was, a fantastic soul singer, an amazing producer of funk records, possibly the greatest guitarist that ever lived.
One of the great power pop writers as well.
Absolutely. I mean, those of us who tried very hard with power pop and went round looking for everything. So the idea that Prince could just knock them out.
He wrote the 5 best power pop records ever.
I mean, his guitar playing, just talk about that briefly. Fucking hell. I mean, he I think that his guitar solo on this, I think it's like a George Harrison tribute live show.
While My
Guitar Gently Weeps. I mean, how did he just play the best rock guitar solo ever? I don't understand.
Well, I quote a friend in the book saying that if he just played guitar, people would know him as the greatest guitarist of all time. That he was Prince, so everyone forgets that bit.
Exactly. And his piano playing's wonderful. The piano and microphone. It's even
when there's quite a lot on YouTube where he shoves the drummer out of the way.
Yeah, he put a drummer on the first two albums.
He's the only musician on the first two albums.
He's like Stevie, like Stevie's drumming.
Yeah.
I mean, that YouTube clip is one of the great Prince moments, isn't it? Because it's supposed to be about George Harrison, right? And you've got Tom Petty there, and you've got, I can't remember who else.
And they're all being quite polite and reverent and whatever.
Being in that very unctuous, reverential way.
This bright red hat and
suit
and stuff. I think
he just takes the whole thing over, and it's like, fuck George Harrison.
One of the things I love about that is George's son, who's on the edge of the stage with the guitar, and the pure pleasure that Prince
Danny laughing his head off. Yeah. Yes, he loved it. I think the others were all like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Yes.
In a way.
In a way.
I can remember the expression on Tom Petty's face, which is like, sort of implying, this is not appropriate.
Well, it doesn't show a lot of, there's not much tribute.
It's a tribute to Prince.
Prince's tribute to Prince. Anyway.
One of the things since he died is just finding all these bits of film that we weren't allowed to see because they got them all taken down straight away. But there are just little things I love, like a version of Pass the Peas to James Brown. Have you seen that?
I don't think I have.
In a club.
No.
And Maceo's on it. And Prince's introduction to Maceo is so... You just see how much he loves musicians and music and his peers. But it's Prince and Maceo playing Pass the Peas.
Right.
We've got
homework to do.
Yes, absolutely.
This, well, look, I mean, it's just been fantastic talking to you about Prince, Nick, and urge any listeners to read Dickens and Prince, A Particular Kind of Genius, even if you only like one of those two superstars.
Don't bother if you like neither.
No, do, and then learn to like them for
learn to like them, because you've reminded me just how extraordinary they both were.
They really were.
And so we're going to turn our attention now to this week's audio interview, which Mark would normally be introducing, but I got wind that a label called Friday Music is going to be reissuing the very first album by Boz Scaggs. William Royce Boz Scaggs, to give him his full nomenclature, in January. So the album Boz Scaggs, it was on Atlantic, came out in '69, and that is going to be out in vinyl, etc. on January 13th.
There's a kind of Dickens link with Boz.
I was going to say sketches by Boz. It all somehow thinks this is a sort of this episode is a kind of Christmas carol offering to the world,
and a Christmas cracker.
Not sketches by Boz Burrell of Bad Company fame. But so, well, I kind of thought, I wonder whether Nick likes Boz Scaggs. I suspect he does, and you confirmed that he did. So we thought this would be a really nice thing to listen to. And it is, we'll just play the first clip. It's Boz talking about that first album, which was recorded in Muscle Shoals with Rolling Stone publisher, editor Jan Wenner at the helm, which is really another subject, I think. But this is Boz talking about the first album.
in the game, and yes, I'd had, through my time with the Steve Miller Band, we'd been in, high-level professional recording situations, having recorded in London and Los Angeles with Glenn Johns producing. So being in the studio was not an entirely new experience, but going into Muscle Shoals into that situation, I was quite open to it, and I found a great deal of support and enthusiasm from the group of musicians and functionaries down there. So we just did what came naturally down in Muscle Shoals, and I wasn't really, you don't really sort of try to control things. I wasn't to the point that my style or songs were really very, very much undeveloped at that time. So we just did what came naturally in Muscle Shoals, and that was just to relax and play the music.
Hey, I'm simple like a fool. Yes, I'm easy, baby.
That's Boz talking to the late Andy Gill in 1997, I think, apropos a compilation that's just been released at that time called My Time, and it covers the Atlantic period and the Columbia period. Nick,
I think I bought it despite owning everything that was on it.
When did you first hear Boz? Would it have been on the Steve Miller Band albums?
No.
Or
it was Silk Degrees. My dad, when I was a teenager, lived in the US, and I went over a couple of times, and there was a neighbour who had a son who was a bit older than me, and he loved music, and he introduced me to things that I didn't know. And one of the things he introduced me to the first time was the J. Giles Band, that live album. Do you know that?
Yes,
the
Full
first one,
House?
Full House,
yeah.
Which is one of my favourite live records of all time, and I couldn't believe the speed of it. I mean, for me, it was an introduction to punk. Anyway, when I went back the next time, I said, "Oh, what have you been listening to?" He said, "I've been listening to this album called Silk Degrees, but I don't think you'd like it." And I said, "Why wouldn't I like it?" And he said, "Well, it's not like Full House." And in the meantime, I'd gone from being 14 to 16 and was much more sophisticated, so I thought my music taste. And I got in his car and he played the beginning of Lowdown, and I thought, oh my God, that was it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Did you go back to the first album at any point?
No, absolutely.
Sometime after that? I mean, I didn't hear it until when I was writing about Southern Soul and Muscle Shoals in the mid-'80s. I think the first Boz Scaggs album was out. It was hard to find, but I think what I did have was the Duane Allman anthology, which had
Loan Me a Dime on
it.
That was, I think, how a lot of us heard Loan Me a Dime.
Yes.
Was through that anthology.
And it is, of course, one of the great kind of epic, Muscle Shoals tracks. And Duane is just magnificent on it. And I think Boz's singing is pretty magnificent.
Yeah, I remember the singing being pretty good. But you're right that those things were hard to get. And so it was a bit lost to me at first. I want to say something about how I didn't listen to things because I couldn't afford them. I mean, it's so funny looking back on it, where we live in a land of music in our pockets the whole time.
Yes.
But you had to take a punt on things.
Sure.
And, I think the first album was one of the things I didn't take a punt on. And I went back to it either when I had money or when music was everywhere.
Yeah. It's a matter of interest. Do you like Sailor and Children of the Future, the Steve Miller albums that Boz was on?
I'm not so much of
down with the psychedelic Boz Scaggs.
No, I'm not.
I don't think he was really down with it, was he?
No, for me, that letting black music have its flow through him was the thing that I loved most. And of course, I went back to Slow Dancer when I listened to Silk Degrees, and Slow Dancer is such a lovely record. And it's Johnny Bristol.
Yes.
And if you'd gone from Duane Allman to
Johnny Bristol.
Yeah,
that's quite weird,
As a teenager, you think, how does this work? But it works.
Yeah. And the cover, I always remember being rather struck by the cover of that album, because it's sort of Boz in his swimming trunks, isn't it? Which is not typical of the period, but I sort of thought it was rather cool. And I've always thought there was something rather cool about Boz Scaggs.
It did look cool, but you'd want to know how that happened, wouldn't you? So have you got any photos at all, Boz, of you?
Yeah, go on,
there's one on holiday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, Torremolino. Yeah. I thought there's something quite sort of cool about the kind of audacity.
Well, it was very white as well, wasn't
Yes.
it? There was a lot of white on the cover.
Yes.
So I bought it second hand and remember being very struck by the cover.
Jasper, you came back from Belgium recently with a vinyl
of Silk Degrees.
Silk
Because
Degrees.
I've been kind of just a bit obsessed with a few. I mean, it has to be said there are a couple of duds on that record.
Yes.
We were listening to it just now. A couple of schlocky,
the schlocky
horrible stuff. But
I've never been a fan of We're All Alone.
It is icky.
no, but the tracks that are good are so good. And I think I was thinking about it. I think I probably first heard Lowdown in the RBP office and just immediately was like, oh my God, and lives for me in that kind of yacht space that I adore, where it's just like, it's so funky and simultaneously kind of white at the same time. But it's just, I don't know, it's just great. And we were talking about his voice earlier, which is quite peculiar, actually.
I think so.
Really likeable. For me, I find something compelling about the kind of anti-nasal kind of sound of his...
He's got a sort of rather odd 1940s voice, I think.
Yes.
And even to look at, he seems to belong to a different time.
He's not like a rock star.
He's not like a rock star.
Never had very long hair.
No, but even the long hair can't really disguise the slight... he looks like he might have been in the US military.
Shall we hear just a second clip of Boz talking about Silk Degrees and Lowdown, and that same audio with Andy Gill?
Lowdown was maybe the third single off that album. Yes, before that was one called What Can I Say and another called It's Over, I Believe. I'm not entirely certain of that. I think Lowdown came along third and was really not being considered as a single. It just happened to be pulled off of the album as a track on black radio in either Cleveland or Philadelphia. I've heard different versions of it, but in any case, it was a station in one of those two cities that started getting some radio action on Lowdown. It was actually a hit on the rhythm and blues, the black side of the chart, before it crossed over to the mainline pop side. And it just appeared on its own. I mean, it really made its own way without the sort of the real pop pressure that that CBS Records was putting on singles at the time.
Better bring the check around to the sad, sad truth, the dirty low down.
Well, very interesting, I think, and I love the fact that Boz is sort of one of those he's got a kind of honorary status in the black music community.
Yeah, there aren't many people like that. I mean,
No.
I don't know whether Tina Marie counts because...
I think she does.
Yeah, I mean, someone else I love.
Me too.
But yeah, Boz made great sort of black music for a long time. I mean, all through the 90s, and there were some good records in the 90s, I think.
And I think in the early 2000s he makes like a jazz record
Yes.
that's not bad, actually. It goes back to that sort of 40s sort of
Yes,
vibe that you were talking
he's
about,
got,
that
like,
actually...
the Bing Crosby
yeah,
voice.
it kind of makes sense. It kind of works in a funny sort of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that this track that takes off on black radio, whether it was indeed Cleveland or Philadelphia, is essentially, I mean, you mentioned yacht rock. It's certainly sort of related to yacht rock, because it's basically it's the nucleus of the Toto guys that came out of that album. I mean, they've gone on record, so without Silk Degrees, Toto would never have existed. Now, some people might hold that against Silk Degrees, but not Jasper and myself. Whatever you think about Toto, I think they were some of the greatest like LA session dudes, all over like Steely Dan records and so forth. But I mean, the playing on Silk Degrees is just glorious, I think.
Completely. And something that, I mean, it was such a weird time if you were of our age, because we were listening so often to people who couldn't play.
Yes.
And loving it.
Preferably, yes.
And then exactly the same time, listening to incredibly sophisticated, jazzy, rocky, yachting stuff.
Yeah.
And I loved both things. I couldn't have had one without the other.
No.
And in fact, what survived, of course, is Lowdown and not Anarchy in the UK, in my head.
In the end, I think the music endures longer than the attitude.
I mean,
but I agree. I mean, I can remember sort of being in love with Jonathan Richman's Roadrunner, but also Steely Dan's Asia album, you know, and it was like...
I loved Kate and Anna McGarrigle.
Sorry?
I loved the first Kate and Anna McGarrigle album.
God. Unbelievable record.
Yeah.
Hoping to get Joe Boyd on the podcast sometime next year so we can...
Okay, I met him recently. Yeah.
He's a fascinating man.
I wonder, just out of interest, if you guys know, what's the greatest album made at Muscle Shoals, beginning to end?
The great. Do I know as a fact?
I don't. I don't know the answer. But every time I think about Muscle Shoals, I think about great songs that were recorded there, and you know, like the Stones. How many? 4 was it? 4 Stones songs. And lots and lots of hit singles. But that Boz Scaggs album is partly a pleasure, I think, because it's an album you don't really want to skip tracks on, that was recorded entirely at Muscle Shoals. Has anyone got anything else? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I would say literally off the top of my head, I would think of, you know, Etta James's Tell Mama album.
Right.
And also Solomon Burke's album Proud Mary comes to mind.
Okay,
but whether I could find like 5 albums that are just like brilliant from start
Tell
to
Mama,
finish.
of course, is fantastic.
But there's going to be...
But certainly by the time you got to the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and rock acts started using it, it was sort of piecemeal, I think.
It was sort of a little bit of magic Muscle Shoals dust that you could sprinkle on your record rather than...
Before taking it off to LA.
Exactly. I mean, Rod Stewart, I think, when they certainly used some of the Muscle Shoals guys.
I think some of Atlantic
And then
Crossing.
Slow Train Coming, of course, was recorded in Muscle Shoals.
And then, of course, Hot House.
And then, of course, Hot House. And then, of course,
Yeah, I'm sticking with Boz's first album.
Wonderful. I really do love the stuff that we had. I mean, Richard Williams, I'm talking to him about Boz, and he loves the last 3 or 4 Boz Scaggs albums.
The most recent.
The most recent ones, the ones where he often goes back and does covers of Bobby Bland classics. And
there's that album Memphis is good.
Memphis is good. Come on Home. And there's one, my favourite Boz track of the last, I don't know, 10 plus years is a version of Richard Hawley's There's a Storm Comin.
You tipped me off to that.
I mean, have you heard it? Oh,
I played it when you told me to listen.
I think Richard's, it's a wonderful, heartbreaking song. And Hawley's version is pretty great. But what Boz does with it, it's just so immaculate and considered and understated. I think it's one of the great vocal performances that I've heard Boz give. I absolutely
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
There's a storm a-coming. You'd better run. There's a storm coming. Goodbye to the sun.
Anyway, well, so that's Boz. We love Boz.
We do love Boz. Have you ever seen him?
No, I've never seen him live. I've seen him I saw him on Later with Jules Holland a few years ago, which was in itself rather wonderful.
Yeah, I went to a show that was in London, and it was a venue that I've never been to before or since. It was a nightclub, and it was a shambles. It was overcrowded. As you try and walk through the crowd to get somewhere, you realise you're falling over like a sofa from this nightclub that hasn't been removed. And the sound was the worst show I've heard since probably the Reading Town Hall in 1972. It was, and I was so disappointed.
Oh, no.
And I loved him so much. And as far as I know, I haven't missed loads of shows in London over the last...
No, I don't think he's been there for a long time.
But when he comes again, we'll all go.
We'll all be there.
We will go. I think he sort of. I seem to remember him occasionally playing like the jazz cafe and things like that.
Don't say that.
I wish listeners
occasionally
could
not
see
going.
Nick's expression on Nick's face.
So you couldn't be bothered either.
I think I probably couldn't be bothered. Maybe it's something to do with the jazz cafe.
Yeah.
Jasper, will you tell us about two or three pieces? that have
Yeah,
gone into
I'll
the
just mention
library?
two things. First of which from this week, which is Stevie Chick on how UK hip-hop got its groove in The Guardian in 2007. And he interviews Will Ashen of Big Dada Records. But he was a music journalist. He wrote for Trace and Music and Hip Hop Connection in the 90s, and then was like, there's no label for UK hip-hop that, UK hip-hop's kind of being seen as a joke. He says, in the mid-90s, no one was releasing British hip-hop. It was a joke, and the punchline was always Derek B. Roots Maneuvers' debut album, 1999's brand new Second Hand, swapped Brit rap's pilfered, ill-fitting Americanisms for sounds that were fresh to the hip-hop blueprint, but that swarmed through South London, dancehall, electronica, dub. It also helped pave the way for the success of So Solid Crew and the grime scene that followed. Roots proved you could be a black British artist who sounded like a black British artist and still be critically acclaimed. Not considered a joke, but sound completely distinctive of your culture and where you came from, says Ashen. I just think it's an interesting piece, an interesting moment when, now grime has kind of gone global to an extent with Stormzy, and around 2007 grime was kind of making waves, Dizzy Rascal and those guys. But it was a kind of time when British hip hop and British rap didn't really mean anything, and Roots Maneuver is someone who, talking about live shows, I saw him at a festival and he was just fantastically good. I mean, this is, years later, this is like in the 2010s at some point.
Isn't it interesting, you read that quote out that said you can still do this and get critical approval. And you think, of all people who wouldn't give a shit about critical approval, you'd think it would be British hip-hop artists.
Yeah, you would.
But no, you can do this, and Peter Perfidas will like you.
But yeah, I mean, it's,
I guess he wasn't talking about Pete, but
no, I guess not.
But even so, it should be critic-proof, I think.
Yeah, it should be. But the last quote is from Will Ashen. I believe black music is art, not just entertainment. The music industry regards black artists as software for an entertainment machine. They're not treated as artists, not allowed to evolve and experiment the same way white rock bands are. But hip-hop is popular art. It's avant-garde music you dance to. It's visceral and intelligent, and that's brilliant. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were just saying in a way, is that not that they, need critical approval, but that the spaces made for black musicians are not the same as the spaces made for white musicians as far as being allowed to be kind of...
Yeah, and it was something I think that Kanye talked about in his last cogent moment.
Yeah, well...
before the wires pulled out. Yeah. I've just read the most marvellous non-fiction book, which isn't published till next year, called Monsters. And it is about what we do about Woody Allen and Roman Polanski. And it's just brilliant. And one of the things that they talk about is some artists, she touches on this from Kanye and being forced into behaving in a certain way. And isn't that what part of the Kendrick Lamar album is about? The new one is about
fame
culture
and all of that,
and being
absolutely
co-opted and
fantastic. Definitely one of the records of the year.
Yes, absolutely. And then the last thing I want to mention, the second and last thing, since it's our kind of Christmas Carol episode, this is just a funny thing that's going to be going in next week for our Christmas homepage, the last homepage for the year, is an article called Human Remains by Dave Simpson. What are the Human League doing playing a Banks Christmas do? Dave Simpson reports. It's from 2000. And it's just hilarious. The scene is the premier Leeds nightclub, Majestics, normally host to Emmerdale actors, Leeds footballers, and reams of blokes in orange shirts. The artistes of the Human League, hit-making giants of the 80s and early 90s, and universally recognised as one of the seminal synthesizer outfits of all time. And the occasion? Well, you won't believe this. Philip Oakey, Susan Sully, and Joanne Catherall are playing my girlfriend's office party. And, it's supposed to be a private affair. It's in a commercial Banks Christmas do. The fans aren't supposed to know about this, never mind The Guardian. We have sidled in courtesy of the and guest bit on the ticket. It says everything about the League's dignity that they refrain from changing the lyrics to Don't You Want Me To she was working as a bank teller. What should have been a sad affair feels like an event, like Vera Duckworth popping into the local boozer. There is something distasteful about legends reducing themselves like this for money, but also something rather fabulous about the unique access these affairs give to normal people. My girlfriend's already compiling a wish list of next year's turns. Kraftwerk, late 70s punk obscurities, The Lurkers, and the Rolling Stones. Just thought it was very funny and kind of Christmassy.
I think young people, though, are not necessarily sympathetic to the idea of earning money. It's like somehow you shouldn't be doing this as the Human League because you were the Human League. So live off that.
Yes. And if you can't live off that, keep it quiet.
Keep it quiet and go and retrain as a plumber or something, but do not play as the Human League.
Yes.
No, but I just thought it was an amusing Christmas
The Stranglers played someone I know's birthday party relatively recently.
Did they?
Yeah.
With the late Jet Black and the drums.
I believe so.
Right.
Wow.
Jet was older than everybody. He was like old enough to be our granddad.
Absolutely. No, he was well into his...
I can remember being aware of that when I saw the Stranglers in 76.
Yeah.
That it was they had this really old guy playing drums.
And Hugh Cornwell was a bit older than...
Yeah, Jean-Jacques was... Anyway, we're not here to talk about the ages of the Stranglers.
What Dave Simpson
else are you going to do?
What Dave Simpson says in this, which is great, is that actually everybody has a fantastic time and everybody does just appreciate it, and it is just basically a gig and kind of who cares, you know what I mean? So it's you know...
Yeah, well, let's hope that some of our heroes...
Who's playing our Christmas do, Barney?
It's the Human League, actually.
You were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar when I met you.
So that's it.
That.
Thank you for those, Jasper. Can't resist going out with just a brief digression into the world of football. Should point out to listeners we're recording this on December 14th. So if you're listening to this after Christmas, don't be confused. But furthermore...
We are precisely between two World Cup semi-finals.
We are.
We had one last night, we've got one tonight.
Exactly. So tonight it's France-Morocco. So if we sound like we don't know what happened in that game, it's because we don't. But we do know
Call
what
yourselves
happened.
writers.
Yeah, that's right. And we don't know who won the World Cup, so just bear with us. But since Nick wrote the wonderful Fever Pitch, which just changed my appreciation of football and so many people's appreciation of football, it really was a landmark event. Just how have you been enjoying the Qatar World Cup with all its uneasy trappings?
Well, I rather feel that I might be in the sort of liberal mainstream of this, which is I spent however many years thinking I'm going to hate it. It is hateful. I won't watch any of it. It's disgusting. And then finding myself...
And then it
started. And I find myself, as a writer, being very near a television set with perhaps something to do, but not what I want to do.
Strange, though.
Yeah. And so suddenly I am watching 3 games a day. And it was a marvellous group stage in many ways. And I think I said to you, Barney, my main protest was not watching ITV adverts and hitting them really in the pocket.
Really,
where
I think that did hit them when they learned that you had been boycotting.
Yes,
those.
so I didn't watch any ITV adverts.
One man stand.
And the football's been kind of great, actually. Usually what happens, everyone says, this is a great World Cup, it was a great group stage, and then you get the first knockout game, it's 0-0, extra time, penalties, and then you have that night after night after night. And it really hasn't been like that.
It's been a bit of that.
A little bit of that. Well, but even that is kind of...
Even that's been fun.
Fun, and the marvellous Croatia, who never lose or win a game. I mean, they've been doing that for about 5 tournaments until, as we say, last night. They're incredible. And all these grizzled guys, you think, what, them again? They're going to do it again.
I know.
So I came
from
to
a country
enjoy
with 4 million inhabitants.
4 million
It's
inhabitants. And I kind of enjoy them spoiling everyone else's fun.
Yes, because no one loves them apart from Croatia.
No one loves them apart from Croatians. We did love them in, whenever it was, 98, I think, when they just emerged. And Davor Suker.
Yeah.
The Morocco story has been amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they've looked kind of unbeatable in some games.
Yeah.
And you have this argument where people say, yeah, but you want Germany against Spain in the semi-final. And you think, well, not really, because they weren't any good. And then they went out. So I've come to accept that Morocco is the new good team, and they've got to a World Cup semi-final.
And could get to a final.
I'd love to
Could
see
get to
them
a
win the
final.
whole thing. It would just be.
Is it
And they're
it's a
fans,
step
those
too far,
fans.
isn't it?
I don't know, is it a step too far?
Well, people will be listening to this and they will know that we're
Yeah, I
looking
mean,
at
it's
our
one of
crystal
those
ball.
positions where like they could all fall apart tonight. They could get demolished by Mbappe and co, or they could do the same thing they did in previous
Spain
games
and
and just be better.
I think one of us should stick their neck out, and I think it should be not me. I think it should be Barney.
I'm going to really stick my neck out, so I think France are
No,
going to beat
I want you to say I see Morocco
in the
beating Argentina in the
wish.
final 4-1.
Although there is, I'm
4-1.
afraid there is that
I like
boring
that
part
scoreline.
of me which would love to see an Argentina-France final, and if it was a great final, which it might not be, because they often aren't. But
often
the
aren't. I
last
think
final with France was
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
and France were awesome.
Yeah.
So
I can't see it being a bad final, actually, if it is Argentina-France. But in answer to
you
your
stick
question,
your head out. Stick your neck out.
it's going to be Croatia.
That's the only semi-final we have seen.
Oh, sorry, we're recording this on December the 13th.
Yeah. Oh dear.
What do you think?
Yeah, actually, tell them we're recording it on before Saudi Arabia beat Argentina.
Before the tournament
I can see
started.
a shock coming with Saudi Arabia,
Yes,
Argentina.
Let's do the whole thing, yeah. I think Morocco
anyway,
are
it's-
going to reach the semi-finals.
It's been
I think
much
Argentina
more,
will be in the final.
I think Argentina might be in the final. I think watching Messi at some kind of weird prime, that goal he made last night.
Do you want Messi to reach this extraordinary summit? Do you want him to win the World Cup?
Yeah, I do actually, because there
me
is
too.
something about legends who don't achieve the very, very highest thing, which leaves room for argument somehow. And we know that Pelé did it. Cruyff never did.
Maradona did it.
Maradona did it. But the Pelé, Maradona, Messi trilogy, I think, would be wonderful.
I think so too. I think so. I mean, he is. I mean, I'm hardly the first person to say it, but he's certainly
really
the
good.
greatest player I've ever seen.
He's actually quite good at this whole football
greatest player
thing.
I've ever seen, and probably the greatest player the game has ever had. I think.
It's funny though, I feel kind of curiously unsentimental about whether or not Messi wins a World Cup. I know it's this kind of, everyone has this romantic storyline. For me, I wouldn't mind it, only insofar as it would mean that he would have one and Cristiano Ronaldo wouldn't, which would bring me personal satisfaction. But I don't know. To me, it's like, for me, I'd much rather Morocco win as a story. I think it's much
you'll
more
regret
compelling.
saying that.
Okay.
No, because what you're seeing on Sunday is the retirement from international football of the greatest player ever to have lived.
And playing against the greatest player in the world today, I think, in Kylian Mbappe.
Yes, who will come back and back and back to World Cups.
Yeah.
And when that final whistle goes and Messi's lost and you will never see him in a World Cup final again, I think you might regret saying, I don't care.
Well,
I
it's not.
I think I do care.
Messi is the greatest player ever, as far as I'm concerned, and he doesn't need a World
Can you
Cup
bear
to prove
seeing him
that.
cry on Sunday because he's lost in his last game? I don't think I can.
No, I don't think I could bear it either.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. It is what it is. I mean,
Listeners, you already know whether you've seen him cry or not. How weird.
we're talking to the future, and maybe he'll have won it. You know, I think there's a very good chance that he will.
I mean, he's an extraordinary individual, is he not? Because the greatest player probably we've ever seen. But as a personality, he's quite a sort of non-personality in a way, isn't he? I mean, he's not the most charismatic guy. He's quite shy. He doesn't say a lot. He doesn't have a lot to say. You know, it is all in his feet.
Does that make a difference with sportsmen?
No, it's just an interesting thing when you think about Cristiano Ronaldo. There's so much attached to his personality and his just absurd narcissism. You know, and Messi's kind of the opposite of that. I think it makes me love Messi all the more that I don't feel like I really know him as a man.
I agree. I don't know him, and of course, one fears that one might get to know him over the next 20 years as he rages from the touchline or says stupid things in a political convention. Or spoils
It'd be great if he just went away. And
went away.
With several
Do you think
billion
Pele
dollars.
was charismatic?
I think he was charismatic. I mean, not. It's again quite not like.
I just think he scored
Scored
amazing
incredible goals.
numbers of goals.
Yeah.
I think Ronaldinho was charismatic.
Yeah, Ronaldinho
Yes.
was definitely
Yeah.
charismatic. It was a real entertainment.
And Thierry.
And Thierry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You think of those. Anyway, look. Thank you for indulging us.
I had the best time.
Listeners, do go out. As there's still just time to go out and buy Dickens and Prince, a particular kind of genius, for your Christmas stockings. Since this is going out on the 23rd, it's published by Penguin, and it's great, as are all your books, Nick. Thank you for joining us today on this very, very cold day. Venturing west.
Semi-final tonight.
Semi-final.
We're really locating it in time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do visit Rock's back pages, where subscribers can read over 50,000 articles and hear over 800 audio interviews. Check to see if your local library subscribes to RBP, and if not, maybe suggest they take a free trial of the world's largest archive of music journalism. We'll be back in the new year, hopefully with Pamela Day Boz.
Indeed.
Miss Pamela of GTOs and Frank Zappa fame. That should be good value. So we will see you again in 2023.
Yeah. Have a happy Christmas.
Happy
and
Christmas.
everything.
Christmas to you.
Or
And
if it's after Christmas, Happy New Year. If it's
Indeed.
after the New Year,
Fuck it.
Happy Easter. Anyway.
happy Christmas sales.
Happy sales. Happy something. Anyway, thanks for joining us,
Thank
Nick.
you so much, Nick. It's been a
Great.
blast.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Last night, it's been another lonely Christmas. Darling, you should have been there.
That concludes episode 143 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Nick Hornby. Dickens and Prince, A Particular Kind of Genius, is published by Penguin and available now. The host was Barney Hoskins, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper, Muris and Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com. Happy holidays.